My name is Solomon Trend. I am a claims settlement specialist. I'm sure you've never heard of us. We are a clearinghouse for hundreds of small independent insurance companies. I have worked for the same company for 22 years and never thought about changing jobs. The work is boring and perfectly suits my character. Don't get me wrong, I don't feel unhappy or depressed. I'm just not very motivated. My personal life is very much like my career. I have been married for 23 years. I have twin daughters, Rose and Iris, who are in their senior years at Albright College. I also have a 4-bedroom house and a huge mortgage that helped pay for the girls' college education. My wife, Marcy, has never worked and has never wanted to work. Our income has been sufficient but not more than that. However, over the years I have managed to save about $40,000. My marriage has always been and remains lackluster. I expected and hoped for more. I tried all the usual tricks to liven things up, but nothing seemed to help. Today I found out why. It was an ordinary day and damn boring. Just after lunch, I got a call. It was from my wife's phone. She rarely calls me at work, so I was curious. "Hello. Solomon, old friend. How are you? I haven't heard from you in years." "Yes. Who is this? And why are you using my wife's phone?" "It's Brad, Solomon. Brad Mercer. You remember me, don't you? I'm the guy you stole Marcy from." "When was that?" 25 years ago. Of course, I remembered. I didn't steal her. He left town, and I picked her up after he was gone. I would never steal another guy's girl. As far as I could tell, she was fair game. Yes, I remember. I would still like to know what you were doing with her phone. "Well, Solomon, here's the thing. I was in town on business and gave her a call. We had lunch together, one thing led to another, and we ended up in my hotel room. Right now, she's taking a shower, so I decided to have a chat with you." "What the hell are you talking about?" "She said she wants to freshen up before heading home so you won't get upset." "Solomon, do you want to hear something funny? Listen to this." There was a brief pause, then I heard the sound of a motor running. I couldn't make out what it was. "Did you hear that, Solomon? That was a hairdryer. Can you believe it? I invited her to meet me for lunch, and she brought a mini hairdryer." "What does that tell you, Solomon?" "What do you want, Brad? Why did you call?" "I just want to thank you for stealing my girl. How does it feel to know that I'm still better than you? You may be married to her, but her heart still belongs to me. Otherwise, why would she be here?" I hung up the call and blocked the number. I didn't need to know anything else. This call answered many questions I had over the last couple of years. It took me less than an hour to quit my job and transfer my salary and vacation pay to my brother's name in Huntsville. I went to the bank and paid all the bills. I didn't pay off the credit cards or the mortgage. I also sent my brother a first-class mail package. I had just finished loading all my things into the car when Marcy arrived. "Solomon, what's going on? Why is your car packed with stuff?" I was sitting at the kitchen table, finishing my coffee, when she placed a few grocery bags on the counter. "Oh, you noticed." For a moment, there was silence as she began to unpack the bags. She stopped halfway and turned around. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" She waited, hands on her hips. I placed my cup on the table and walked over to the counter. Rifling through her handbag, I pulled out a bright red metal mini hairdryer. I just held it up, waiting for a reaction or an explanation. For a moment, she froze, then took a deep breath and quietly left the room. 5 minutes later, I was on the road to Huntsville. My brother Bob and his wife Barbara were happy to see me. It had been a few years since we last got together. Bob and I chatted a bit while Barbara prepared dinner. I managed to explain the whole situation without any major emotional breakdowns. He seemed impressed by how calmly I handled it. I was very tired from the long drive, so I went to bed right after dinner. When I got out of bed, Bob was already gone. He worked at the Toyota plant north of Huntsville. Barbara offered to drive me around and help me get settled. It wasn't difficult. I got a new driver's license and arranged for my mail to be forwarded to Bob's home. Barbara followed me to CarMax, and within 20 minutes, I had a check for a Honda CR-V. As soon as Bob finished work, we headed to Rocket City Trailer Center. Barbara and I had lunch at Olive Garden. I wasn't too picky, and after a few hours, I finally settled on a small Rialta. The next day, it was ready for me. The sales representative spent several hours explaining everything I needed to know about operating and maintaining my new mobile home. I accepted everything as it was, except for installing 4 new tires. Barbara was happy to help me set up everything needed for housekeeping, and Bob put together a small toolkit from his crowded garage. The next morning, I was gone. I had no plan. I had no destination. Whatever happened, happened. Wherever I ended up was where I was meant to be. That doesn't mean I wasn't prepared for surprises. I was good-natured but neither careless nor foolish. I avoided traffic jams. I avoided big cities during rush hour. I avoided bad weather. I didn't look for trouble and tried to steer clear of it. For the first 2 weeks, I just drove. I was an active supporter of the 15 Free Parks for Nomads program and figured I would try them all by the end of the year. The problem was that at the speed I was going, I would soon deplete most of my gas supply. Even though I didn't plan anything, I decided to look for an opportunity. It was mid-July and I was in South Dakota. I hadn't planned it, it just happened. I had always heard about Sturgis, but since I had no interest in motorcycles, I never thought about going there. At the third place I stopped, they offered me free parking, free meals, and a bit of cash if I stayed the whole month. I had no experience as a bartender, so for the next 5 weeks, I worked in the kitchen. Handling the clippers was no problem, and I even managed to work in the kitchen a bit. It was a bit hectic but engaging. I paid attention and learned a few things in that short time. The event lasted only 10 days, but it was very busy both before and after it. I was occupied every day, all day long. It was exciting, to say the least. By the end of the month, I felt I could prepare most fast food dishes, though I wasn't a chef. After the event ended, I worked for another week and then moved west. 2 weeks later, I got a job as a cook at a campsite near Cody, Wyoming. Free parking, free food, and cash. How could I complain? After 3 months, the weather started to turn bad, and I left, promising to return the following spring. They were happy, and I gained much more experience and some money for the road. The last sign I saw mentioned something about the Shoshone National Forest, but I had no idea where the heck I was. It was a beautiful day, and I turned onto what seemed like a designated parking area. It was a nice spot, away from the noise of street traffic. Since I wasn't in a hurry, I decided to stay for a few days or until someone chased me away. That's when I met Micah. He approached the vehicle while I was enjoying the sunset. For an older man, he looked somewhat rough, but he didn't resemble a vagrant or an outcast. The coffee smells good. Do you have an extra cup? I poured him a cup and pulled out a folding chair from under the Rialta. My name is Solomon, like the king. What's yours? My name is Micah, but I don't resemble any king I know. He smiled at his own wit. We sat and chatted about the weather, the landscape, and other trivial things for a few minutes. Where's your car, Micah? I don't have one. I've been walking. From where? From home. His short answers were starting to annoy and frustrate me a bit. Is it close by? No, not really. I've been walking for 2 days. Are you hungry? Yes, I could eat. Do you have anything handy? I don't want to bother you. One thing led to another, and I ended up feeding Micah. He then spent the night in the van. The next morning, we had a leisurely breakfast and chatted a bit more. Micah, does anyone know you're here? Oh yes, my granddaughter Ottilia. She knows where I am. She's not worried? Why would she be? I always come home. I didn't know what to say. You know, Solomon, maybe I should go home. I need a change of clothes and new socks. Hey, a bath and a shave wouldn't hurt either, old man. 30 minutes later, Micah and I were on our way. The only town sign I saw read, Lander, but I still didn't know where I was. I should have gotten a GPS for the RV before leaving. Maybe I'll get one for Christmas. After an endless series of directions, we finally stopped in front of a house that looked half stone, half log cabin. It was, to say the least, very picturesque. She was standing on the porch, waiting for us. It was as if she knew we were coming, and I realized she did. Thank you for bringing him home. I was afraid I'd have to go after him. She was tall, with bronze skin and black hair. I couldn't say much more because she was wearing loose jeans and a flannel shirt. You knew where he was? Of course. I always know where he is. I have a tracker sewn into his jacket. The battery lasts a week, but I usually pick him up after about 3 days. Does he have dementia? Is that why he wanders? No, he's perfectly fine. We've had him checked several times. He just loves to walk in the woods. He's been doing it for 2 years, and we've had no problems. Still, I sometimes had to fetch him. If I tried to restrict him in any way, we'd have issues. I extended my hand. By the way, my name is Solomon. I guess I saved you some trouble. Ottilia, Micah is my grandfather. I appreciate you bringing him home, or did I already say that? Anyway, come on in. I have hot coffee and cold beer. Your choice. Micah had disappeared somewhere. I assumed he was taking a shower and changing clothes. We talked for a bit, and then Micah appeared, freshly showered and shaved. Ottilia prepared dinner. It was the first time in several months that I had eaten at a communal table. It was nice. After dinner, Micah disappeared somewhere, and Ottilia gave me a tour of the estate. They owned 250 acres, most of which were covered in forests and mountains. Not very suitable for ranching or farming, but it was beautiful. Ottilia and I seemed to hit it off. Before I knew it, I had been fed dinner and promised a hot shower and a proper bed for the night. A month later, I was still there. The winter was harsh, and Micah didn't like the snow. He spent the whole winter carving wood. He enjoyed making canes with unique patterns and handles. Of course, all the wood he used came from the property. I spent hours walking with him, weather permitting, in search of just the right pieces he wanted. What caught my attention while we were gathering materials was the large number of poplar trees on the property. I learned by chance that carving poplar bark had become very popular, but Micah was only interested in carving his canes. Ottilia was constantly writing romance novels. She seemed to have a talent for it. She had more than 35 e-books about a corset ripper on several sites. She had many fans, and her new novels sold as soon as she published them. They were cheap, but she sold a lot of them. I earned a living by handling all the overdue repairs that the house and outbuildings desperately needed. It seemed like an ongoing project with no end in sight. The previous owners of the estate had kept horses, so there was a large barn at the back of the house. Micah and Ottilia didn't care for horses, so the barn was empty. I parked the RV in the barn next to an ATV that seemed to never be used. It only took half a day to repair the ATV and get it into proper working condition. I had a plan, but I wanted to talk to Ottilia first. Ottilia, we need to talk. She was working at her computer. Oh no, she leaned back in her chair, placed the back of her hand on her forehead, and began to moan. Naturally, I stood there with a confused expression on my face. Calm down, Solomon, it's a joke. I don't get it. Let me explain. In all romance and erotic novels, when a couple has a sexual problem, their conversation always starts with those 4 words. Usually, one of them is about to confess a dirty deed they've done or are about to do. This important revelation always leads to a split between them. One is deeply hurt, and the other is usually indifferent or vengeful. Or something like that. It can have many, many consequences. Oh, I just wanted to borrow the ATV. Well, that's a big letdown. I was hoping for something more. She smiled. Do you want a beer? Micah was sitting by the fireplace, carving wood. Ottilia had set up a chair and covered it with a tarp to catch the wood shavings. In the summer, she made him sit on the porch to carve. So, why do you need the ATV? I spent the next hour explaining my plan to her. I had 3 distributors ready to buy all the poplar bark I could supply at wholesale prices. The property had more wood than we would ever need. We only harvested bark from dead trees, and there was enough land to keep us busy for many, many years. The only problem we faced was transportation. There simply wasn't a practical and economical way to deliver the bark. Ottilia gave me her blessing to do whatever I wanted. She even agreed to let Micah help me. Micah was glad to have something to occupy his time. The transportation problem was resolved. Once the cold weather passed, Micah and I had some fine days to start our small project. We decided to begin with the trees that were easy to access. The biggest challenge was making so many trips back to the barn. The utility cart wasn't very spacious. Micah was more than happy to be assigned as the driver. Fortunately, the barn was big enough to store everything we managed to gather. As the barn became more filled, we reduced the frequency of our collections. Both Micah and I slept well. Ottilia and I never talked about ourselves or our life situations. I didn't want to intrude on her personal life, and I think she felt the same way. It had been quite a while since I left home, and I felt I should at least contact my daughters. I no longer had a phone, so I had to borrow one from Ottilia. Rose, it's your father. They shared a dorm room, but I didn't know which one. I recognized her voice. Dad, is that you? My God, where the heck have you been? We've been worried sick. Mom is beside herself. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Honestly, I'm okay. I just needed to get away for a while. I was afraid I might do something rash if I stayed. Didn't your mom explain that to you? Mom said she came home one day, was putting away groceries, and you had a fit and ran out of the house. She said she hasn't seen or heard from you since. Is that all? That's all she said? Yes. She sat around for about 2 months, then left and got a job at a home goods store. The night shift pays more, and she needed the money. She hasn't been paying for the house and can barely cover the utilities. She said the bank is after her. Dad, what the heck is going on? Rose, I could try to be straightforward and tell you exactly what your mom should have explained, but it's a bit late for that. I don't want to be the bad guy, but your mother cheated on me. That's nonsense. I don't believe it. How do you know and with whom? She spent the afternoon having sex with her ex-boyfriend, Brad Mercer. While she was in his room taking a shower, he called me from her phone and bragged about it. When she got home, I confronted her about it, and she just left the room. After that, I left. What do you mean by confronted her? She took a hairdryer with her when she went to meet him. Why would a woman take a hairdryer to meet an old friend? It was intentional, and she knows I know. Damn, Dad. Iris and I are going to visit her this weekend. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Can I call you back on this number? No, it's my friend's phone. I'll block your number after we hang up. I'll call you in about a month. Okay, take care of yourself. Bye. I didn't know it, but Ottilia was standing nearby and had heard the entire conversation, at least my side of it. That evening, after Micah went to bed, Ottilia and I sat by the fireplace, drinking wine and making popcorn. Yes, I was also tending the firewood at the fireplace. I'm sorry about what happened between you and your wife. Were you eavesdropping? Yes, I couldn't help myself. I think I understand, but I don't want to intrude on your personal life. It's okay. She cheated on me and I left. There's nothing more to it. But now that it's out in the open, tell me your story. What is a beautiful, energetic young Jewish woman doing hiding away in Wyoming? Wow, you're wrong on 3 out of 4 points. I'm not beautiful, I'm not energetic, and I'm not hiding. However, I am Jewish, if that matters. You're avoiding my question. She sighed. My husband cheated on me, and he got himself killed. Let himself be killed. What the hell does that mean? She leaned in and whispered in my ear, Micah killed that son of a bitch. I'm sure I heard her chuckle softly. Now I understood why they were in Wyoming. Micah was hiding, and she was just taking care of him. A good setup. We never did figure out the best way to transport the wood. I think it's more accurate to say we lost interest in finding a suitable method. I never made any attempts to sell the wood, except for the initial contacts with a few distributors. I somehow just forgot about it. However, Micah and I got into the habit of harvesting it. It was beneficial for both of us. It was a beautiful day, and we decided that instead of collecting bark, we would spend time clearing some of the access paths to reach the more difficult trees. By the end of the day, we were both utterly exhausted and, upon returning, were surprised to find the barn empty. Ottilia was smiling as we walked up to the porch. She had beer ready, although it wasn't quite cold enough. What happened? She was still smiling. Right after you left, 2 guys from Smoky Mountain Timber arrived in a truck. I showed them what was in the barn, and they wrote me a check for $4,800. They loaded the bark and were gone before noon. I didn't know how much it was worth. I hope I did okay. Micah and I gave each other a high five. It felt odd to do that with a 70-year-old man from New Jersey. Ottilia took it as a sign that everything was fine. I had no idea how much it was worth, but it seemed like a good amount of money. It was a good day. Now we needed to refill the barn. It was time to talk to my daughters. Hi, Rose. It's your dad. I just thought I'd call and see how you're doing. I'm afraid not so well. Iris is here, so let me put you on speaker. How bad is it? Is someone sick? Mom is in jail. Okay, I'm all ears. We talked to Mom after our last conversation. She had absolutely no idea about the phone call that guy made. She admitted that she was there and that they had sex, but she didn't know what he did or why he did it. 2 days later, she was arrested. Alright, but what was she arrested for? She shot him 5 times. Is he dead? No, she used your old .22 revolver with hollow point bullets. She shot him 5 times just below the belly button. It didn't kill him, but it certainly ruined his manhood. There were 6 bullets in it. Yes, here's the funny part. After she shot him, she called 911 and, while on the phone, intentionally shot herself in the foot. That doesn't make any sense. We didn't think so either. Later, she told us she did it so she would have something to remember it by. Should I come back home? No. She'll be out on bail in a couple of days. I don't think she wants to see you right now. She regrets what she did but doesn't want to talk about it with me, Iris, or especially you. Alright, well, then let's leave it at that. I'll call you back later. Oh, Dad, one more thing. We think she's going to file for divorce. She said you probably wouldn't do it, so she decided she would. She refused to discuss it further. The bank has repossessed the house. Life goes on. Everything pretty much settled down. Ottilia returned to her writing, and Micah and I went back to harvesting bark. The weather was good, and we took advantage of it. Then I got the talk from Micah. I didn't see it coming. He caught me off guard during our lunch break. Solomon, my good friend, you're not pulling your weight. What are you talking about, old man? I do twice the work you do. That's not what I mean. I mean, in the house. I don't understand. There's not much to do there. Ottilia takes care of almost everything, and when I try to help, she pushes me away. That's not what I meant either, damn it. Solomon, Ottilia is a grown woman in her prime. She needs a man's comfort. She needs strong arms and a warm body. You're the best and, essentially, the only candidate for the job. It's time for you to step up and be her man. Damn it, Micah. You're not suggesting what I think you are you? You want me to sleep with your granddaughter? How do you even know if she likes me? She's never said anything. Of course not, you idiot. She's waiting for you to make the first move. What if she rejects me? What will I do then? I'll have to leave, and I don't want that. I like it here, and I don't want to ruin anything. Solomon, trust me. She won't reject you. There's nothing more to say. Let's get back to work. Of course, Micah was right. There was no grand revelation or heart-to-heart conversation. That evening, Ottilia and I simply excused ourselves and went to her room. I moved in with her the next morning. It was different, but at the same time, everything remained the same. She seemed content, and I was thrilled. Micah smiled for a whole week. The weather was getting warmer. Working with bark in winter was challenging. When the weather was decent, we worked. Otherwise, we rested. Micah was busy with his canes, and I tried my hand at carving bark. It was fun to learn through online videos. I went through a lot of band-aids. Ottilia continued writing her novels. The next week, everything came to a halt. Micah and I had prepped several trees for harvesting the following month. As we climbed the hill overlooking the house, we saw a state police car and 2 black sedans parked in front. We watched for a while as Ottilia talked with several visitors. She was very expressive, waving her hands and stomping her feet. I thought it looked pretty serious, but Micah seemed to be laughing. Eventually, 2 men persuaded her to let them into the house, presumably to look around. I was almost certain they weren't looking for me since I hadn't done anything wrong. I wasn't so sure about Micah. Micah, do you remember the place where we first met? He looked at me, smiled, and nodded. Can you meet me there in 2 days? He nodded again. Micah took some snacks we had with us, all the water, and quietly disappeared over the hill. I hoped Ottilia had a fully charged GPS chip. I continued down to the house, playing the role of a clueless hired worker. They were indeed looking for Micah. Ottilia had no idea how they had tracked him to the hunting cabin. In addition to the local police, there were 2 officials from New Jersey and 2 federal agents. Apparently, Ottilia's ex-husband was an important person. I have no idea why it took them so long to find Micah. They terrified Ottilia but showed no interest in me, which was a relief. They left after a few hours, but they didn't look happy. Ottilia, however, was thrilled that I hadn't brought Micah back with me. She didn't ask me where he was, and I didn't tell her. We relaxed that evening and for most of the next day. I suppose you and Micah made some sort of arrangement? She phrased it as a question. I smiled and nodded, something I had recently learned from an old man. Do you have his passport? She smiled, stood up, and left the room. A few minutes later, she returned with an Israeli passport and an envelope containing $10,000. Throughout the day and evening, we checked several times to see if anyone was watching the house. No one was. The next morning, Micah was where he was supposed to be. He was hungry and a bit cold, but in good spirits. 15 hours later, I dropped him off at Regina International Airport. I offered to go with him, but he insisted it would be better if he did it alone. I was sure he would be on the no-fly list in the States. After a delicious steak dinner, I rented a room and got a good night's sleep. The next evening, I returned home. I called my daughters and learned that Marcy now worked at Muncie from 5 to 8. They didn't go into details and I didn't ask. The good news was that I was no longer married. Some prison advocacy group had helped Marcy get a divorce in less than 90 days. Reluctantly, I gave Rose my current address. I really wanted to get that piece of paper and saw no harm in it. Since Micah refused to return to Wyoming for the wedding, Ottilia and I got married in Haifa. Micah gave us the ranch as a wedding gift.
Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments.